Hi again, everyone. I swear I'm not moderating any more than this. So thrilled to be on this panel as well, to talk about creating the change that you want to see in the world. It's something that I've thought a lot about in my own career, and certainly can't wait to hear from our amazing panelists. So I want to just go down the line, and Daniel, we'll start with you, just to have you each introduce yourselves quickly and answer our little icebreaker question, which is, what was the moment in your career that made you say, wow, this industry really needs to change?
Hello, everyone. Daniel Taylor here. I'm the founder and CEO of Bags. We built a platform to help primarily businesses led and run by women and people of color manage their finances and access growth financing in order to continue to grow. The moment in my career where I realized that the industry needed to change, and there were way too many, was when we first started Bags and we started working with businesses to understand the financing and the types of capital they wanted, but not necessarily the financing that they needed, and realized that we live in a little bit of a Shark Tank world where everyone wanted that big equity check, but in reality, the thing that would actually help get them to where they wanted to be was potentially debt financing or some other form of alternative financing. And so realized that there was a huge gap and have been laser focused on trying to solve that gap for the last 4 years.
Ashley?
I'm Ashley Balla. I'm a partner at Halogen Ventures. We invest in early stage consumer technology companies, all led by women. So we have about 75 plus portfolio companies, 100% women led. The point in which, gosh, there have been so many because I've been an investor for about a decade in VC. So when I first started out, I was quite young, and I remember walking into this conference, and everyone was over the age of 60. They all looked the same, and they were all male. And I thought, oh my goodness, I stick out like a sore thumb. And my general partner, Jesse Draper, who's incredible, kind of threw me into the deep end and said, embrace it. You're young, you're a woman of color, and you're smart. Like, go in and just work the room. And at that point, I thought, this has to change. And I probably didn't really see anyone that looked like me until about 3 years into my career into venture capital. And then about 5 years into my career, these organizations started to form. Young Women in VC, Women of Color initiatives, and then getting access to capital to those of underrepresented founders as well.
Rajni?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rajni Jacques. I am the global head of fashion and beauty at Snapchat and a fashion and creative director. I would say the first time, I think, working in fashion and working in beauty and being a Black woman, I think you know it right away. So there wasn't a thing where there was like a threshold or time where I said, oh, there needs to be change. But I think when the light bulb really hit for me was probably circa like 2015, 2016. And this is when, the digital boom happened. There were so many different platforms out there, kind of, pushing out the gatekeepers, and people could start their own business. They could be their own PR because they had the tools now to kind of push themselves out there. And then I came back to Condé Nast, and what I realized was what I was seeing on the digital realm was so much more colorful than what I was seeing in the publishing world. And really kind of being an agent within publishing to kind of say like, hey, this is what's really happening in the context of the world. And what we're doing here is not necessarily mirroring that. So one, you're gonna lose your readers, you're gonna lose the people that have seen this magazine as a Bible, because they can get that somewhere else really quick and with people that look like them. So I would definitely say like 2016 was really kind of when that hit me.
Okay, Ashley, let's start with you. So you talked before about how the VC world obviously is not known for being diverse. I know that you've done a lot of work within your own company as well to make change. Can you talk us through the work that you're most proud of?
Oh gosh, the Halogen front, we've invested in 100% female-led companies. Over 50% of our founders are underrepresented founders. And between the ages of like 26 and 60. So big range of diverse founders that we're supporting. We believe at our core, from when we started the fund to now, is diversity breeds success, but that's diversity on all fronts: age, race, gender, background. And a couple of things. We last year launched this Invest in Women campaign, and we got a billboard not on Sunset in Beverly Hills because those are very expensive. We got one just outside of Beverly Hills that we could afford, and we put our founders on it, and it said, "Do you want change?" And this represented founders in finance, changing climate, waste management, childcare, education, foster care, and some of those founders were in our portfolio. And we did a digital campaign as well that got, in 4 weeks, over 4 million impressions. They ended up keeping the billboard up. I'm like, I hope they're not here, because they're like, we need to take that down right away. But really proud of that. It got a lot of reach, and I think the biggest piece of making change is being as loud as you can, but have meaningful content that can connect with people. And then the other is I'm part of a couple initiatives. So I'm part of All Raise, which is a group of female founders or funders that are bridging that gap between founders and funders. I'm part of Somos VC, which is a venture capital ecosystem for Latino and Latina VC funders. And then I'm also part of Gold House, which is a venture capital ecosystem for Asian Pacific founders. And just making sure that wherever we can, change the trajectory in which founders are getting capital, that capital is going towards diverse founders that are creating billion, if not trillion-dollar businesses. It's a missed opportunity. People are leaving money on the table.
For sure, for sure. So Rajni, you talked already a little bit about Condé Nast and about your time in publishing. Would love to hear from you about how you thought about publishing and diversity, inclusion, et cetera, in your transition into tech then after that.
Yeah, I think in anything kind of like working in publishing and then working in tech, I think a lot of people think that it's such a huge leap. It's two different worlds, and it was in a way. But, what I wanted to do is kind of bring the skills that I learned in publishing to the tech world. Now, obviously, when we think of tech, there's a particular type of person that we think of, young, male, white. And what I wanted to do was obviously bring people who look like me into it too, but then create campaigns, work with brands, work with creators who were all diverse, and make sure that they get seen too within the tech world. I do think it's one of those things where, and especially now where DEI is being challenged left and right, there's so much going on about, how did you get your chance? How did you get in the door? Oh, you got in the door because of X, Y, and Z. And what I'm trying to challenge people to, to think about is there's a certain group of people that did not have equality or even equity or even have the same chances to be able to walk through that door. Yes, we can say privilege 24/7, but there are groups of people that don't even get halfway, don't even have the same resources, don't have the same schooling, because where they come from, the schooling is deprived or there's not enough money flowing through it. And so when we're thinking of those challenges for diversity, inclusion, and equity, for me, what I'm thinking of is, hey, I'm already in the door. How do I get someone else in here too? So I do a lot of mentorship, not just in the tech world, just in general. Being a board member of a school in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where it is about Black and brown girls, high school, really learning and teaching them and giving them skills that they probably, especially in that type of neighborhood, would not get. But also just giving them the chances. Hey, do you want to come intern? Hey, do you want to come shadow me? Hey, I know someone who's looking for someone. Yes, you might have to work on a Saturday, but guess what? You get to meet someone in a field that you want to be in, and possibly down the road they can help you through. So I think, for all of us, it's always about, keeping the door open and just making sure that you look out, yes, for your own, in the sense of looking out for someone that doesn't really have the opportunities, because even still me in this world, and I've been in kind of publishing fashion and beauty for a minute now. There's still not many people that look like me. There's still not many people that look like any of us, you know, in that world. So I think for us, it sucks at times to feel like we have an extra kind of like thing that we have to carry, but I do think carrying that and opening it up to different people will only make the future better. It gives us a better chance.
Absolutely. All right, Daniel, I love an origin story. Would love to hear what inspired you to start Bags.
So, where do I start? Prior to Bags, I was a technology founder in the advertising technology space. And I sold my company in 2019. And then summer 2020 came around. And to be honest, the first business I started, I loved building the business, but I didn't love the business that I was in, which is part of why we ended up selling that company. And then 2020, following the murder of George Floyd, I think it was a point of reflection for me as a Black entrepreneur who honestly had the privilege to go down the pathway of entrepreneurship. And what underpinned that privilege was access, right? Specifically access to capital. And myself, William, and Ignacio got together, you know, really with the mission and the goal of, if we can increase access to capital, we can increase access to entrepreneurship, with the goal of helping businesses, like many of which are in this room, generate wealth for themselves, for their communities, create great jobs, and really sort of revitalize our local economies. And so, and we did, when we first started the business, we realized pretty early on that 99% of businesses won't necessarily raise venture capital in order to grow, and actually shouldn't raise venture capital in order to grow. And that's okay, because what we were finding was that most of the businesses that were coming to our doors were coming to our door because that there was a growth opportunity on the horizon, where in turn there was a ceiling that was put up due to access to capital. And if we could provide that access, that ceiling could be removed and these businesses could grow. And so, you know, we've been doing this work focused on how to provide a bridge towards alternative sources of capital. And the way Ashley, we were talking about this a little bit before, the way we look at it is the best way to grow your business is revenue first, actually. Then potentially debt, and then potentially equity. But really where the magic happens is at the intersection of financing, debt capital, and unlocking revenue potential. And our primary focus area is within the CPG space, because as many people know, that sort of cash conversion cycle can be really, really difficult. Expanding into retail can be difficult. And if working capital is executed well, potentially alongside some venture, you could build a really incredible business.
Okay, so our topic, Ashley, is, of course, creating change that you want to see. Would love to hear your advice for everyone here. It's especially sometimes hard, I think, for people who are more junior, let's say, within their organization, to feel like they have the power to change something. What would your advice be to someone who wants to try and create change within their own organization?
Don't be afraid to network. And any opportunity that you get to, you know, if someone comes and says, come in this door, I've opened it for you, take that opportunity. Ask for mentorship too. I think the biggest part when I was starting out was, how do I find a mentor? It's this intimidating thing, you know, and you're like, I don't know if I'm qualified. I also don't know which direction I want to go. Who am I even qualified to ask this person? So when you go and ask, and a lot of people reach out to me via LinkedIn, or I meet them, you know, out in the wild, and I can tell that they're at this crossroads where they want to ask for advice, or they want to ask for mentorship, or, you know, just simply have a conversation, but something's holding them back. And so I kind of lean in and I say, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, what is it that's keeping you up at night? And then it kind of breaks down that barrier. There are a couple of organizations like Him for Her that are really starting to get more diverse people onto boards, and I think that that's really important. A thing that we do at Halogen oftentimes is when we see a board and it looks a certain way, or we see a founding team and that looks a certain way, we say, I think you need to hire X, Y, and Z. I think we need to change it from the top, and that will trickle down to the bottom. So, lending a hand, opening doors for people, both men and women, because we need allies, and just know that there's room at the top for everyone.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. I have a question, Rajni and Daniel after that. Rajni, I know you've done a lot of work outside of your actual job, obviously. Would love to hear from you more about building Black Bed-Stuy. You mentioned Bed-Stuy before. What inspired you to start that, and what kind of work have you done?
Yeah, what inspired me to start building Black Bed-Stuy with 2 other friends was living in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which used to be a predominantly Black neighborhood, one of the largest neighborhoods in Brooklyn. What we started to see was the gentrification was so rapid that people were being displaced. Businesses that had been there for 50 years, especially during COVID, were just going out of business. And so sometimes when you're in it, obviously, it was the time of George Floyd, and emotions were especially high. But for us, we were just like, how do we do something? How do we create change in a very grassroots, local level? Because this is a community that we love. So was the main thing. Like, how do we start making change here up? And so we just canvassed, and what we started to see was a lot of these businesses did not have access to just knowledge of how to get a PPP loan. Or maybe those loans, those pamphlets that were coming were only going to specific businesses that had come into the neighborhood through gentrification. And so for us, what we wanted to do was do a call to action to the community. If you love this community so much, and you love that mom and pop store, that, the Haitian patty store, or that hardware store, why don't you come out and help create financing for these businesses? So it really started as a GoFundMe at first. Then we kind of scaled it to a marketplace where we were like, hey, are you an entrepreneur? Are you an entrepreneur, a Black entrepreneur? Are you an entrepreneur of color? Why don't you come and sell your goods here? We'll create the atmosphere, the environment, and bring you your customers so that you can, in a way, create equity. I think the thing is we, at least for me, I should say, sometimes get hung up on equality versus equity. Obviously, equality is great, but equality is very subjective to whomever you're speaking to. Equity is equity. Equity allows me to buy in. Equity allows me to buy land. Equity allows me to buy and plan for the future so that we can, and hopefully I can pass down some type of equity or some type of, like financial stability to the next generation behind me, which are my kids, and they can then do the same. So I think for building Black Bed-Stuy, the main word was equity and allowing people of color to have equity to plan for their futures and their families' futures.
Love that so much. Okay, Daniel. As we've been talking about today, Black and brown founders, women, still don't get funding at the same rate as white men. What do you think, and obviously you're doing amazing work on a much larger kind of macro level, what is it going to take to make real change?
I think it really starts with access to information, because there is quite literally hundreds of billions of dollars in the US that has been allocated for the purpose of lending or investing in businesses like ours. But they're hard to get to, hard to understand actually how to acquire, and then even when you do acquire, understand the implications of those dollars on your business's growth, right? And so I think a big part of it is making sure that there's a better ecosystem, right, for information to be passed along between businesses, between venture capital firms, between lenders, between technology companies who are trying to create a little bit more of a better ecosystem in the middle. And in doing so, then we can really start to get to the point where us as business owners can make the right decisions around our business's growth for the business that we want to build and for the impact that we want to see. But it really starts with that need for an increased access to information and where there are bridges. And I think really it comes down to community, right? And if we can create those micro communities of us sharing information with each other, I think we're going to see the change that we really hope for.
So I just want to say, everyone up on this panel, I am so inspired by you, and I think you're all such incredible change makers. I just want everyone out here also to understand that you are all change makers as well. And so the more that we kind of hear stories like this and stuff, I personally just find it so inspiring that we can do so much to change things. So wanted to thank you three so much, and everyone please join me in giving them a big round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.